If your ink's too slow and your nib won't flow, here's one of the places that you can go. Larry is here to see you through with Mr. Announcer and Cubby too. It's Larry's Fountain Pen Reviews.
Okay, we are live recording.
Oh, wow, we're kicking into high gear.
Yes, we're on.
Okay, folks, let's go ahead and cut this down. We're going to be live recording. And then once I introduce the Double Dr. Shot of Double Dr. Pens, then they're going to take over. That's Dr. Stephen and Dr. Joe. So first of all, let's start with the awesome Dr. Stevens.
Dr. Stephen Brown.
Yes.
You want an intro from him?
Yeah. If you would take a moment and share us, how did you get into all this? I mean, you're a psychologist, right?
Yeah. So that means that I'm insane, and that answers a lot of the question. But having said that, no, the reason I got into it, in a nutshell, is that I used fountain pens for a long time because in the Netherlands we use them in school. You learn to write with a pencil, then you move on to fountain pen, which was school supplied. And to answer the next question, I don't still have it. Unfortunately, it got lost over time. But having said that, I used them for a while. I kind of stopped using them, came back to it. But when my granddad passed away, that was 2010. He left me his fountain pen, and that kind of, although I had used pens for a bit again at that point, I kind of got interested in learning a bit more about it because it was an older, not super vintage, but an older Parker, I think 80s or something. And I started to learn more about pens, and I started to learn that there are all kinds of different things like gold nibs and converters and like that kind of the more intricate stuff. And that then sent me down a spiral from which I've never recovered. But that's that was kind of the start. Yeah.
My future plans is I want to have you and your lovely wife on here as well. I have a blast with her. I think she's a monster. She's great. She's spectacular. She brings all kinds of cool stuff to the table, and she knows her stuff. Yeah.
And she certainly has a very interesting energy. So yes, no, I think that would that could be interesting. Yeah,
I'd love to have her. She's so cool. Yeah, I watch her videos. Yeah, she just I love it. I mean, it's fun, it's entertaining, it's informational, and you guys give some really important information. If people would actually listen to what you got to say, I think they can overcome some of their issues with their pen problems, but you gotta have to pay attention. So, and again, Dr. Stevens, he doesn't say now, okay, I'm not responsible if you break your pens. Don't hold me responsible. You know, he's gonna put you on the right track. But if you're like a gorilla and break it in half, nothing he can do about it. So, Doctor, how did you get started in fountain pens real quick?
Which one are you talking about, Dr. Brown?
Dr. Stevens.
Yeah, he just answered that, Larry.
Pick one. There's three of us here.
Beg your pardon, Dr. Stevens. I beg your pardon, my show. No. Would you like to repeat that again, please? Yes.
How did you start reviewing pens? Maybe that's a good question.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Again, please forgive me.
No, don't worry.
The question again: how did you get into fountain pens?
Yeah,
I think the getting into pens, that was really because of my granddad's pen that led me to kind of want to learn more about pens, and that's also how I got started in reviewing pens, because at that time. So again, this was around like the end of 2010, and at that time, the YouTube sphere was not overly populated with people reviewing pens or doing much about fountain pens. But one person that was there was Brian Goulet, and I watched his videos, as I think many people have, and have learned a lot from those videos. And as a result of that, I at some point recorded a video kind of asked him about a specific product, if he'd ever used that, a pen product, and he said no. I said, well, I could record a video, and that well, kind of one thing led to another. And then over a decade later, I'm still doing this. So that's kind of how that got started, I think.
So how long have you been doing this now?
Too long, probably. But it's well over a decade now. The first video was I think that was January 2011. So I mean, it is actually like over a decade now, and that is a very long time to do anything. That's fun.
I've got to add something I want to bring up, maybe for Larry and Stephen, that both do reviews, is that one of my favorite things is to see how Dr. Brown Stephen actually responds to trollers on Instagram. It's one of my favorite things to see when someone has some sort of criticism and wants to blast you, and you expertly deflate them. And Larry, I know people have trolled on you as well, and that's part of the deal. I think Matt Armstrong at some point couldn't take that; his skin wasn't thick enough. But
yeah.
I appreciate how you've been able to navigate that, Stephen, and that's really great. Because no matter what you do, someone's going to troll.
Yes, and you have to accept that. I think that will happen, and especially, I mean, some platforms, I think, draw that out a bit more than others. YouTube is kind of known that happens, and that is by far the best thing to do. I think is to not respond at all, right? But sometimes you also feel, well, but and then you kind of want to say something, and not having the expectation that now everything will be resolved, because it won't be. Right, it won't be. But just having that, sometimes it's good for your own mental health to just get something out, and as long as it doesn't become a sort of a mud flinging contest, or because then you will never get out. That brings a lot of negativity and make things very unpleasant for yourself. But if it can just be a little bit, at least for me, I found if I try to respond with a bit of humor, then it makes me feel better, and it makes the whole situation less oppressive, and then you move on again.
Mm-hmm. This has been a few decades ago, Stephen, when you were doing your thing, very polite, very helpful, trying to help people, giving suggestions, showing them what they need to do. And then one guy totally went off on you. He called you some names, and you handle it very well. You kind of you kind of put the fire out, but there was no call for that. And sometimes we get to think, well, you guys think you know it all. I said, I'm not the one that knows it all. I said, Dr. Joe and Dr. Stevens knows it all.
Oh, when I post videos now, I take I turn the comments off. I don't really give a crap what people think. I'm not posting for that reason. I'm posting for informational stuff, and if they don't like it, fine. But in most of my recent videos, I just turn the commenting off. They can still give a thumbs up or thumbs down, but you and I know the value of what we post. Right.
Larry, I think you left out one person, Larry. My ex-wife, she knew it all. But anyway, let's move on.
She's on. No.
One thing I get criticized is, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, my favorite pen is the Mont Blanc. That's me. Okay, not that that they resemble a high icon of a beautiful, well-made fountain pen, because people would disagree with me, and it's okay for people to agree and disagree. They have their own opinions, but for me, I love the Mont Blanc. That doesn't mean I don't like other pens. I even like low-end pens. So I'm fixing to come out with some low-end pens, mid-range pens, and high-end pens, and I'm going to talk a little bit what I like about them. So try to give people where my head's coming from, because people think that a lot of us on here are just stuck on quality pens, and that's okay. If that's your thing and you like certain pens, I think you should go for it. I don't have a problem with that.
I do want to say that to Dr. Stephen Brown and Larry, both of you that do reviews, do you all both realize how much influence you might have over the general public? Because I own this pen because of Dr. Stephen Brown. I got this because you said it was your favorite pen. And I looked up to Stephen Brown. I said, man, if he says it's his favorite pen, it's got to be freaking good. And of course it is. It is a fabulous pen. And, but you know, I think a lot of my accumulation at the very beginning of of this hobby 5-6 years ago came at the hands of Stephen Brown and Matt Armstrong, Larry, and all the other ones that were doing reviews. And you know, if I thought they liked it, well, I had to give you one. And for the most part, they were all right on, you know, but I didn't know if you realize how much power you do have in that influence.
So it was like, when I run into a difficult problem, because when I review a pen, it takes me a little longer because I really want to bond with the pen. I really want to learn how that pen is going to write, how it's going to handle, fill in the hand. I want to know if it's going to skip, it's going to wet, if it's a wet nib. I want to know everything about it, where it comes from. I try to find a history. I try to put all this together in a fun, encouraging way. If I run into a problem, and that's when once in a while, I will contact Stephen to see if he can figure out what I'm missing so I can correct it. You know, for me to review a fountain pen is just not getting a fountain pen, ink it up, put it on the table, and that's it. Because, you know, it's going to be me, it's going to be Stephen Brown, Dr. Joe, Tony, any one of you up there that's going to put your name on the line, and you're going to recommend this pen. So you got to be real careful, because that can hurt your reputation. Those are my beliefs. And I'm really strong in giving, to the best of my ability, the pen that I'm reviewing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
The problem that we have with any kind of review, and Stephen will back me up on this, from the power of the study, as a scientist would say the N is 1. And that's problematic. That means you've only gotten one sample. So if you happen to get the lemon and your whole opinion is that these pens are crap, well, that might be 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 1,000. So that's one of the reasons I tell people what I like, don't recommend. I mean, I admire people like Stephen that do it, but you know, for me, it's an N of 1, unless you get a chance to test like 100 of the same pen from the manufacturer. You can't really make a lot of, all you can do is your own personal observation, right, Stephen?
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think that's also one of the issues, because when you talk about, and I use this term with much reservation, but when you talk about the power that you have as a reviewer, or the influence that you have as a reviewer, I do try to be very aware of that, because I'll give you 2 quick examples. If a company like Montblanc makes a $2,500 pen, then they are saying, this is worth $2,500 of your money. So then that had better be a damn good pen, because that's a lot of money, right? So that's one thing. And I don't have much issue in criticizing that, because that's like reviewing a Michelin star restaurant. Those people think that they are really up there. So then show me that you are really up there. But the more complicated issue, I think, is when you deal with smaller pen manufacturers. If you are dealing with someone who, so to speak, makes pen in his shed or on the attic or in her basement or whatever, those people, if they send me something to review and I say, well, everything about this product is terrible, then that goes out to a lot of people. And the effect of that could be that a company like that does not get to start up, or doesn't get to grow the way it might deserve to grow. So I want to be very careful, and you have to strike a balance between, you must be honest, obviously, because otherwise what's the point of doing a review? But I agree with Joe, you also have to be aware, well, this is one example that I have. This may have some shortcomings, but I find it very important to try to look for positives. Sometimes it's a bit more challenging than other times, but you do have an effect, and this is sorry, overused and cliched, but I mean, with great power,
yes,
does come a certain responsibility in what you do and what you say. And in a world where we live now, where basically opinions are facts, I think you have to be even more careful with what you say and how that will come across. So,
Stephen, real quick, Dr. Stephen Hawking, early in his career, related his story when he was Lucasian professor. And he basically said he went into a lecture hall and there was a postdoc presenting, and he basically proceeded to chop the guy's legs off scientifically. And then he realized after he left, he might have just killed that guy's career. You know, it's like you said, great power. You got to be very careful how you use it. So
constructive criticism will go a
Hi,
very long way.
I have to book out really quick, guys, for 10 minutes. My dean wants to talk. We've got some issue going on at school, so I'll be right back.
Yeah, I have to say that's one of the things that scares me that I hear from my kids at school. If it's on the internet, it is true for them. And there's a lot of messed up kids there.
I have been on YouTube since before it was YouTube. And I can tell you there's a lot of stuff on the internet that you have learned to go, oh, really? I would love to see things from your point of view, but I can't get my head that far at my... Anyway, so...
It's true.
Yeah. I do. I was going to ask you, Stephen, and Larry, you know, my friend over in England, Dave Burrows, Penultimate Dave, who does reviews. He once got some serious backlash from our friend at ASC, Mr. Manu. You know, he reviewed one of his pens and made a notation of the celluloid that was used. That was Winston Churchill. And and apparently, you know, that wasn't even around when Winston or whatever it was. He claimed that and the pen was made in France or something to that line. Yeah. And he got back and he got a little flack from the thing. So I'm wondering if you've ever were reviewing something and maybe gave your opinion and heard back from the manufacturer that, hey, I don't really appreciate the way you presented that. I'll let you answer.
Who would like to take that question?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah, no, I can speak to that a little bit. Let me start out by saying that it is very rare, but I mean, it also, I think, again, you work on the premise that you are honest in your reviews, but having said that, there are different ways to go about that. I don't recall ever having reviewed something and then saying, well, you know, look at this. This is a piece of crap. And if you buy this, you're out of your goddamn mind. Like, I mean, if you would do that, then that's what you could do. Like, and some people would do that. But I don't see the point in doing that, because it's someone's work. Someone created that. And I think that's disrespectful. Yeah. Having said that, there are occasions, and I can give one occasion, and out of respect for the manufacturer, I will not mention the name of the manufacturer here, but there was a time that someone ordered a pen through Kickstarter, got that pen, had it shipped to me so I could review it. It was a very artistic, sort of artisanally made pen, and the first problem arose when I couldn't put the converter in. It simply would not fit. So I thought, well, then I will use a cartridge. I put in a cartridge. It had sort of metal prongs to keep the barrel and the section together. And those prongs just scraped against that cartridge. It was poorly made. So I couldn't ink it up. It was impossible to ink up that pen. I will cut out a lot of back and forth emailing here just to keep this a little concise, but that pen was replaced, and the replacement I put in the cartridge, and it just drained itself. The ink just flowed out of the section. That was the second pen that didn't work. So at that point, I thought, yeah, I mean, to be frank, the person who sent me this pen paid money for this, right? Like, and not $50. It was something like $200 pen or something. So I did do a review of that. I tried to be as kind as I could. I just said, look, it's beautiful. It's a nice material. But unfortunately, this happened and that happened. So, I mean, there seemed to be some quality control issues. Then I got an email from the owner of that company that he was now severely depressed. These were his words, because of the review that I had done. And he basically now required therapy because it was so terrible what I had said. And I had made a terrible mistake in all this, because I had treated his fountain pen as a pen, but it wasn't a pen, it was an art object. Well, get out of here, man. What are you talking about? So it was a lengthy conversation, several page long emails from him about how terrible I was and everything I'd done wrong. And I will conclude this by saying that is very, very, very rare. I remember maybe 2 occurrences like this in 11 years. But having said that, it does sometimes happen. And then you have to deal with that. And that's obviously he will never send me a pen to review again. I mean, that much is clear, but that's okay. Like different things are for different people. The only thing I would then say is, I understand that it's difficult to take criticism and take feedback. It took me, I mean, I kind of do the joking thing on Instagram now with responding to occasional comments, but that took me, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years to get to that stage. If you make a product and you sell it and someone then criticizes that product, that is hard, right? And I always say being a pen reviewer or reviewer of any kind is like being someone who goes to a birthday party without bringing any gifts, but who does criticize the gifts that everyone else has brought. So, I mean, like, so there is that. And then I am the one who then criticizes a company. Now, in that case, if you create multiple pens that don't even write, then I'm sorry, but then I do think that I'm within my right to say, look, something is off here, because these things do not do the one thing that you have purchased them for. But again, there too, you strike a balance, and most of the time it's fine. I have never heard anything bad from any of the big companies because they don't care. But this ties into what I said before. It's the smaller companies, the one-person companies that are trying to break through. And if you criticize those, you have an effect. Montblanc does not care what I say about Montblanc pens because I make no dent whatsoever in their sales, right? Anyway, I don't want to monopolize the time. That's what I would say.
So,
can I ask a quick question?
That's been in my mind and made a lot of sense to me. Decades ago, you brought up, what is a pen worth? And you told the people, the pen is worth only what you think it's worth.
Yeah.
And I've gone by what you said religiously, you know. So people have told me, well, that's a pretty stupid idea. I said, well, if it's a stupid idea and you like the pen, then buy it. But I am not going to pay what I don't feel comfortable with paying for the pen. Not saying the pen's not a good pen, but what I can afford, you see? So that was some good logic that Stephen brought out. Mm-hmm. Stephen brings out a lot of good stuff because he knows his business.
No, but I think it's also, I actually think that it's a fair statement, and that's actually not mine. I read that in Peter Twidle's book on fountain pens. That's the title of the book. It's a book on fountain pens, but it's also called On Fountain Pens. Anyway, he said that because he comes from Peter Twidle, who is a well-known big name in the pen repair business, and he had a fountain pen store, and then his dad, when he died, but he inherited, the author inherited that. Arthur Twidle, I think. Peter Twidle was the son, Arthur Twidle, I think, was the dad. Anyway, in any case, Peter Twidle said that in his book, he also goes over the major brands and says, well, if you want to buy Conklin, these are some of the most collectible models, and this is some of the most Parkers, and this, etc. And it was in his book that I read that statement for the first time. And I think it's a very important statement to live by, because when you talk about fountain pens, most pens are not worth penny for penny what you pay for them. You could ask what product is. I mean, very few things are. That's how the market works. Isn't a classic Pen's LB5 really worth $1,850 with a cross point nib? Probably not penny for penny. But if that's a pen that you like, then that pen may be worth that for you. And that's an important thing. There is also the enjoyment that you get out of a product, and the joy of using it, and the pleasure, the fun of all that. So, I mean, that's important stuff, and you shouldn't underestimate that. And I think that sometimes we forget that not everyone is able to purchase a $1,500 pen, but not everyone's able to buy a $100 pen. Not everyone's able to buy a $50 pen. right?
I believe someone had a question for you, Dr. Brown. I did not see who.
I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick question. Dr. Brown, thanks for the show. It's been awesome. Really appreciate some of the newer stuff is really good, but I really enjoyed the older stuff, like the shootout videos were really cool. Really enjoyed the disassembly line, and if you could do more of those, they're always great. But the question that I have is, where did the iconic Dr. Brown, hey there, come from? Are you a closet Obi-Wan Kenobi fan, or is that something more organic?
Yeah, that's
closet.
Yeah.
There's no closet there.
No, I don't know. You know, there is a certain endearing cringeworthiness to my old videos. When I occasionally watch them,
Love them.
I really want to jump out the window, and it's because, but I mean, it's 11 years younger as SBRE Brown. I was not then the intellectually enlightened giant you see before you now. I was a different type of person. I was younger. That was sarcasm. So the short answer, where does it come from? I don't have a clue. What I do know is that at some point, being an awfully awkward nerd, at some point I started to do that thing, thinking that might be cool, and especially in the old videos, it's so awkward and so non-smooth that it kind of has a charm. And then at some point it becomes a thing, and then that is your thing. And now I'm stuck with it. So now forever I lose. And the number of people at pen shows who walk up to me like this, and I do this. And I think, oh my God, what have I started?
That's a good one.
I love it.
And Stephen, just to clarify, 11 years ago, I was still the intellectual giant that I am now. 11 years ago.
Yeah, but you mean some
Can't
people
get away
like
from
that,
it,
Joe.
Stephen.
Some
Can't
people
get away
don't.
from
Some
it.
people need to grow. Some are born perfect. It's the way it is, yeah.
And 11 years ago, I was still the giant in size that I am.
Me too. Me too.
Oh my God. I've got a kind of, I'm sorry. And by the way, those old videos and with your old videos with the swords and the blades and all that were wonderful. And like you said, we enjoy those. That created part of your character, who you are. And the same with Larry. You know, my introduction to Larry's fountain pens was his videos at his little desk with his little shop light on his desk with his little his cutter, and he would open up a crayon, and he'd be so excited, and he would just and to get me all thrilled to want to do something. So I love those old videos, and so but I wanted to ask you a question about writing because of your background, Stephen. There have been studies on the dating habits of penguins and everything else. Has there been any studies on the effects on the brain while people are writing, putting pen to paper? You know, has there release of dopamine and all that such?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to be said about that. One thing is for sure that if you do something that you enjoy, and that could be writing with a fountain pen, you for sure you're releasing dopamine, and that makes that experience pleasurable. As to the actual effects of handwriting on the brain, once upon a time, and I can send you that because it should still be up. I wrote a blog for Leiden University where I worked at that time about those effects of handwriting, and it's really popular scientific blog, so it doesn't go into a lot of detail, but you know that's the spirit of our time too. You just throw some stuff out there and say, oh, this is research. But having said that, there is some evidence to suggest that writing with a fountain pen can do certain things for your brain that, say, typing does not. For example, they've done this with younger kids. Right. They found, and how could you not find that? But they found that specific motor areas in children who used handwriting versus children who typed in school, certain motor areas were a little bit better developed, and you can interpret that as you will, better connected, maybe a bit thicker, like that kind of stuff. So there are some effects, and I think the final thing that I notice, and that when I colloquially talk to people, often people say they notice too, is that I feel, and that could be a placebo, but I feel that I remember things better when I have written them down than when I've tried to type them out. And that could just be because you spend more effort, like it gets encoded more elaborately in your brain, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is something there.
There was a study that
in typing, you're just dealing with muscle memory. Your eye sees the letter and your finger types it without having to do any brain processing. with writing, you are exercising multiple areas of the brain that work together, and it's more interactive because you're actively thinking about each word that you write. So it's not simply rote memory.
And they say that you remember things half as good as when people tell you, twice as good as when you tell other people, and like something like 9 times better when you write it down and you can see it. Because there's something that has that physical
you comment on that
to it.
Makes sense.
What do you say?
Did you answer that or leave it alone?
Stephen, talk a little bit about your inks. I know you've got the SBR Brown ink. Explain and offer I guess religious explanations why you don't use Yamabudo ink. I'm just saying, that's like actually blasphemy, and it goes against God in general. Anyway, I'm a fan. So when I was into this calligraphy stuff with the copperplate style script, I loved sepia inks. I used to use Norton's Walnut Drawing ink, which I think is peat moss derived. But I love sepia inks, and there was a time where I think people confused some of Da Vinci's work as being, some of it might have been written with walnut ink, but certainly a lot was written with iron gall ink that just oxidized over time. So tell us a little about your inks and your choice in inks and why you don't use Yamabudo.
Yeah, well, Yamabudo is no. I think Yamabudo is very nice if you're looking for a purple. And I still something like where I think I should get that, and then every time I end up not doing that for some reason. But having said that, there are certain inks I have found kind of over the years that I tend to gravitate towards certain brands much more than others. And initially, when I started, it was a lot of fun. Started with pens. I mean, it was a lot of fun to explore all sorts of different inks, and the fancier, the better. But at some point, you also realize that the extra shimmery, super sheeny, nice and shiny, multi-shaded, etc. inks are 20 hours to clean out of a pen. Yeah. And at some point, in that respect, man, I envy you only using the same ink, because you never have that issue. But yeah. That to me became a bit of an issue, and I started to use inks that I know clean out fairly easily, and that does mean certain things. Waterman does clean out easily. Mont Blanc does clean out easily, and that kind of guided what I ended up using. So I really don't have that many inks. I used to, but not anymore, because I have kind of what I like, and that is a lot of Waterman, Mont Blancs, maybe some Diamine. That is SBRE Brown, because, well, I try harder when you already have number one, but yeah, which is also dye mining, by the way. So yeah.
Speaking of which, you should send me a sample of that so I can review it.
Yeah, I can do that. Just send me an email with the address, and it's coming your way.
Thank you,
Michael Ward. Welcome. How are you doing?
Hello,
another good. Canadian right there. Another. I was
going to say SBRE Brown ink is rather difficult to get in Canada, considering that you live in Canada.
That's what I hear most people say.
Yeah. Ley wines.
They're on the other side. Canadian shipping is so expensive.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a big country, man. Like, it's what we have.
I keep trying to talk to the fountain pen shop here in Vancouver and be like, come on, man, work with me. Vancouver needs help.
Nice.
But one day.
Mike, do you ever use any fountain pen inks with a pointed pen? Is that a sin?
Oh, no.
I will say I used to. When I was actively using fountain pens more than I am now. With fountain pens now, like I still use my fountain pens every day. They're on my desk and stuff, but I pretty much just use like 1 or 2 inks with them. But back in the day when I was going through my exploring inks and getting like attending pen shows and buying new inks and getting samples of inks and all that kind of stuff, I used to get like Goulet samples back in the day too. I used to test those with dip because I was using dip pen a lot. So I remember using a lot of Urban inks back in the day, but I haven't in a very, very long time. Not because I didn't like them, but it's just not what's on my desk all the time anymore, really. And they stain my hands. I like that I can write with dip pen ink like all day, every day, and my hands are never dirty. And I'll touch a fountain pen for like 10 minutes and I'll have a purple hand for like a week. It's baffling to me. I'll be like super careful too, because I know what's going on. I got to refill one of my pens or something, and I'll be super careful with my syringes and everything. Like I'm working in a lab, and I'll be purple or green or blue.
But if you use Yamabudo, it'll just look like you just got a rash. It'll be okay.
Hey, now I take offense to that. Wait a minute.
I got pens inked with Yamabudo. It's okay.
I have the opposite problem. I use Sumi ink and I can't get it off of anything.
Well, you're talking about the carbon-based things. Yeah, they can, especially if it's a more permanent one that's lacquer-based. Yeah.
One of the reasons I am anti-Sumi myself a lot of the time, unless the job requires it.
Stephen, have you ever done any dip pen, or played around with it at all?
Sorry. Yes, I have. There was a time early on when I got also kind of into dip pens, but in the words of Clint Eastwood, man's got to know his limitations. So I found out fairly quickly that when it comes to calligraphy, I can do bad Gothic, and I like doing bad Gothic because it forgives a number of sins, because it kind of looks cool anyway, even if you're not very good at it. When it comes to the exceptional stuff that people like Michael Ward do, like I would love to be able to do copperplate type stuff, etc. But the reality is that I have seen more motorically coordinated creatures at the bottom of ponds than myself. So the reality is that if I try that, I know it will not work. And I'm sure, obviously, it would take a lot of practice, but I also have a fairly heavy hand. It's just not for me. And that's the fun thing about all this. You can do what works for you, and that's okay. So I let the professionals handle the fancy calligraphy, or just calligraphy, period. And once in a while, I fiddle around a bit. Now, I know that was not an answer to your question. I have used dip nibs, and they're the king for calligraphy, but because of how little calligraphy I do, I have a couple of pilot parallels. They're fun. They do what I need them to do. I don't have to dip them all the time, and I just accept that I'm not a professional calligrapher, which I'm absolutely not, and that's cool. So that's where I am with that.
Well, having said that, can you tap dance?
Of course. It would be terrifying, but it's just like nibs. Every nib flexes once.
Oh man, I enjoy Mike's tap dancing. I enjoy watching those little videos that you put on there. They're great.
You know, Stephen, I'm going to be in your city in April, I believe, or May. No, May. End of May. I'm going to be where you are. We could film a little ditty. You could flex your one time in the tap dance world.
It would be.
Regardless, I want to get together and have dinner or something while I'm there. But
long remembered. Yes.
I got a question I want to throw out. I've been trying to put this together, but so far it hasn't come together. And I'm trying to get a group of folks to meet once a month, twice a month, have a small committee, 5 or 6 people, so we can talk about fountain pens. So we can talk to people that are having problems about fountain pens, and so they can ask questions. And since you guys are the leaders, I think that would really be helpful in setting them in the right direction. What do you think about it? If you're interested, email me and let me know. I think it would be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion.
Oh, it's a great idea, Larry. People are always looking. That's how I started with that Goulet video 101. As that kind of was, I saw that just like you're mentioning, and I was curious about it. Of course, I didn't watch the second video on what not to do, and that's why I put calligraphy ink in my my little Kaweco. But I finally, after watching video 2, but it's very, very good. And I think you have, Dr. Brown does the doctor, consult the doctor videos as well, where you can ask him questions as well. So that's along the lines of what you're talking about, Larry.
Yeah, yeah. And then I would also, I've been thinking about it, I would have to bring the time up to about 7:30 instead of 6:30, you know, to give everybody a chance. So, and that's really been a big goal of mine, because I really want to help people. You know, I just don't buy pens to buy pens. I buy pens because that's my heart. That's what I love. And the little that I know, I want to pass it on to somebody else. But then I need the big guns like you, Dr. Joe, Dr. Stephen, to come on out and kind of back that support and let them know how important it is to maintain a fountain pen. When you find problems with fountain pens, how to repair fountain pens, if they're repairable, to give your input, your advice, because you guys, believe it or not, you guys are big in the fountain community, and you bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And before I go ahead, Larry.
I've always thought, Dr. Brown, you know, when I went first on, you were the very first human pen guy I met. And it was like focus, bam, Dr. Stephen. I said, this guy is awesome. He's cool. He's all over the table. He must be on acid.
I can imagine me on acid, man.
He knows his stuff. I mean, he was popping them out. Bam, 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 bam. So I was really impressed. So I would have to say that you were my mentor, leading me through all these years, believe it or not. Of course, you got a dummy for a mentor, but I'm trying.
Mentee. He meant not you, Stephen. He meant himself.
He's a mentee. Yeah, mentee. And I gotta say, yeah, just like Larry said, you know, one of the things about Stephen Brown, I gotta say, you were one of the guys that when I started watching videos, I thought, man, this guy's relatable. I'd like to have a beer with this guy. I mean, he'd have to be a lot of fun to be around. And that's how you came across. I think that's what's so important to note, that you were genuine. And every one of those old videos, those, you know, the craziness and bye-bye, you know, all that, you know, I loved it all. You know, so it was like you're just a regular guy.
Well, I think that's very important.
Are you planning to come to any of the U.S. pen shows?
Me?
Philly, yes. 2023.
You were here once, Doc. Remember that cool-looking coat you wore?
Yes, the multicolor.
Yeah, that's planning to come to any of the upcoming U.S. pen shows.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to. The problem is that because of my job, which is teaching in college, often things are planned such that for me it's in the middle of a term, and it's hard for me to leave because I'm in the middle of a course. I would love to one day do DC again because it is a fun show. And that's in August. In August, I'm done. That's usually my class-free period. So that one day that will undoubtedly happen again.
Stephen, do you think pens are overly priced?
I think what I find sometimes a bit saddening is that I feel that 10 years ago, and I understand there's a bit of inflation in this, but it's more than that. 10 years ago, I felt that an expensive pen was $500, and then all of a sudden an expensive pen was $1,000. And now a lot of the new pens are coming out of $1,500, $2,000, which makes a lot of those pens unavailable to a massive segment of the market. And that kind of makes things a bit elitist, which I think is very regrettable. It makes things, people want to, for example, some people, I get a lot of questions from people, I would love to try an Arco pen. Do you know a cheap way to get it? No, sell a kidney, man. Like, I don't know what else to tell you, because that's what it's like now. And that's unfortunate. I mean, I don't appreciate this like that.
By the way, he's not actually he's not actually saying to go out and sell a kidney.
No,
for those who are watching
for legal
later.
reasons. I don't
Too
actually.
late, Marilyn. I've already done it.
Yeah,
I've been
kidney's
a
only going to
physician.
get you a Homo sapien anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I've been a physician for a lot of years, and I can tell you that there's people out there that are thinking thoughts about it.
I bet no, and it's a fair point. So no, really, that really is a joke. But I mean, but it is like it is part of a larger thing. And I remember once having a conversation a couple of years ago with Peter Leywine, who owns Leywines, which is a sort of upscale fountain pen store in Toronto, and he said, I showed him some pens I had with me, and he liked them, and there was one somewhat more expensive one in there, and he said, you know, it's very interesting because a couple of years ago, $1,000 fountain pen was unthinkable. And this is a man who sells expensive pens. He said it was not a thing. People would come in and we as vendors would say, $1,000? I don't think I'm going to buy this. Nobody will end up buying this. But now people come and say, oh, $1,250? Take my card. There you go. And that has become, in a few years, this is within living memory. This is not early 1900s. This is within living memory in the span of a couple of years. That whole expensive fountain pen segment has become a thing and an acceptable thing. And it's kind of weird. Like, it's just a pen. Like,
back in the 1900s, if we spent $1,900, we could get a house.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, and when you think about it now, that some of the pens that are out there are the price of an older used car. I mean, it's a pen at the end of the day. It's a pen, and you heard it here first. But I mean, fountain pens don't matter that much. It's just a pen. You know. Yeah,
I've always said this every time I've been asked about fountain pens and their value and everything, and ultimately, then the bottom line is that on a monoline, you can't tell the difference if it's a $10 pen or a $1,000 pen. I've written letters and I've used both in the same letter. And you would never know which one I used. I mean, obviously, there's no way to determine that. Ultimately, it comes down to what's comfortable in your hand, what the value you place on that particular thing. Yeah, I found as much enjoyment right with my TWSBI as I have with this, with this one. I mean, they're just, it comes down to the act of writing and what value you place on that pen. I think one of the videos you did, Stephen, you've done thousands of them, but there's one that you sat behind a desk. You didn't review anything. You talked about honestly reviewing, subjectively, objectively, stating what your point is. You can say, hey, this is a pen, this is a cap. But anytime you start adding in anything else, it becomes subjective. And I remember that video. I wish I could recommend that specific one, but I can't remember where it is in your collection. But I remember that one very well. I enjoyed that a lot.
Well, it's important because once in a while this comes up in comments of, oh, you're so subjective. Yeah, what do you want me to do? This is a pen. This is a cap. This is a nib. It writes. It has a feed. It has a converter. That is an objective statement, but I don't think that helps people very much. And I think that's one of the important things when I mean, it happens fairly regularly that people contact me, email me, and they say, I want to start reviewing fountain pens. What should I do? What are suggestions that you have for someone starting out? And one of the suggestions is, well, be aware that a somewhat thicker skin is not a bad property to have. But beyond that, I think the most important thing to me is find your own voice. Do make sure that your character, your personality shines through in the videos that you do. Because for me, my videos are the way I am. The way I talk to you now is the way I am. This is not a role that I play. This is me, and that probably says a lot about me. Thank God I'm a psychologist. But I mean, anyway, like it has to be you. It has to be you on the screen, because if it's scripted and everything is polished, and that for some people that works. But I think the most important thing is that you do what represents you. And for me, that means certain quirks and things that you know if you see my videos. But I think that makes them genuine. And I like to think. And that I think is an important factor, because without that, it's just another person talking about pens that might be too sterile. And it is important to convey your opinion. I think.
And it goes the other way. If you're too overly flamboyant, and then people meet you in public and they're like, why isn't he flamboyant? What's wrong with him?
Yeah. No, and you're right, and I've had that, because the like, I mean, I do think that when you add it all up, I mean, I have videos where I dress up as a professor with a deer stalker with a stuffed lobster on his shoulder. I mean, I have videos where I'm Mill Cockfield. You know, I mean, I have all these kinds of things that are incredibly disturbing when you really think about it. And then sometimes people meet me, and I'm like, they meet me at I remember what, like, different, like, so at a pen shop or whatever, and they start to talk to me like, wow, you're actually normal. Well, thank you very much. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, when you see those videos, no, but it's true. Like, when you see those videos, there is a certain extravagance in them, and a bit of performing, of course, because that's part of it. It's the same way I teach. There has to be a little bit of performance in it, because otherwise you don't capture your audience's attention. But at the end of the day, you're also just a person, and sometimes you're quieter, and you don't have, like, I mean, if I sometimes I feel that I should do the experiment, and I should be Professor Dr. Tarquin Dangleberry for a whole day, and sort of talk like this, and I just see how they would respond, and I think that I'd probably be arrested by the end of that day. Anyway, just saying. I know why the hell I started to talk about all this.
Somebody mentioned Matt Hoffman before. One of the things I always admired about Matt's videos is the production value. He had some of the best production value I've seen. I mean, the lighting was great. You know, it may have taken him a while to get there, but yeah, I missed those videos for that reason. He always had such great lighting, and I've tried to do the same myself, but you know.
I think exactly what you said, being yourself, Joe. You know, that's why Stephen Brown has sustained such a longevity, and that's why Larry's been such a great reviewer over the years, because he is himself. That's him. I guarantee you that's Larry right there, and that's Stephen. And I think, you know, like, I don't know him personally. You know, David Parker is another one who does. You could tell that's who he is, and so. I think that means a lot. I mean, because it comes across. You can't fake it. I'm a musician. I've been on stage many times, and I can tell you, and Larry will attest this, you can't fake it on stage. You have to really, you just be yourself.
Yeah, yeah. You know that, Tony. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've done a great. I applaud all of you guys that do that.
A while back, Stephen did a video that made me think.
I got a question for you, buddy. Give me your honest thoughts, good or bad. Noodler's Ahab fountain pens.
It would be an outstanding pen to end your life with.
I was gonna
like, if you would have to fall on a pen to kill yourself. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's a very interesting pen, and I have had a few. There was
there's one, yeah.
There was a mention of shimmer, and I just want to point out that either the Noodler's pens are excellent for shimmer, or the Fountain Pen Revolution. They have the widest channels I have ever seen, and they're excellent for shimmer. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, and that's one of the nice things. I mean, I think that when you look at some of the Noodler's pens, there are certain advantages. One is that you can take them apart completely, which is great. User maintenance.
You have easy to clean out.
You know, that's great. You can set it. You can put other nibs in, and I do think that is all great. So from that perspective, I think they're fun pens. My issues lie more in that I've had some. Same thing with the Nippon set. I've had some that simply would not work. They would not write. Went through all the steps, everything, the heat setting and everything, and it just would not work. And others do, and I don't know what the factor was. And that's certainly not unique to Noodlers. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun pen that you also have all those modes with a sort of the pump thing in it, and the eyedropper and all that stuff. It's nice.
I think if you want to start a militia, Nathan would be the guy to do it. He would.
You know, one thing about the Noodler's pens, and you know, maybe it's a mixed bag, of course, but I think maybe what some people don't realize is that there is actually a channel for the nib to sit in, and if you have an opaque model, you're not going to see that, and getting it set is still going to be out of alignment. So if you have one, you enjoy using it, what you might check and see is if the nib needs to sit inside of the channel.
I've learned that the acrylic ones do not have that channel. They're completely around. There's like a ledge on the inside where the butt of the nib sits up against. I just want to point that out. I'm gonna get me another one of these. I love it.
Well, this was like the Noodlers one. It's that vegetable plastic stuff they use.
Yeah, this one.
Sorry, the Ahab.
They both have.
Even one of the things that doesn't come up a lot with inks, especially fountain pen inks, is light stability. You know, I mean, if you're going to be taking notes in notebooks, they'll last a decent amount of time. But if your stuff's going to be exposed at all to sunlight or bright light, you know, things like Mont Blanc Blue and Pelican Royal Blue or Pelican 4001 aren't necessarily the best for those conditions, right?
Dr. Joe, when is the last time that you put a piece of paper on a wall in a museum? Fountain pen on it. I'm just saying, well, actually, like,
you gotta remember, you know, I'm somebody who tests things like that, you know. So, but when you're a calligrapher and you're doing a piece for somebody, Michael could tell you this, or Stephen, you know, you basically, you got to consider that stuff, because I've done wedding certificates for relatives. I don't do them for commission, but I've done them for, and there I think about what ink I'm going to use. So I'll use iron gall inks as long as they're not on acid-containing paper, which really isn't made anymore. And certainly would not use anything that's not. There you go. You know, and a modern, an older ink that's still around is the what's the black one? The Michael. It's the one that used to be the better reputation than it doesn't. It's waterproof. I forget the name of it, but the formulation changed on that ink. I'll see if I can remember it. But I used to think about stuff like that. You know, look, if you're writing with Pelican Blue or 4001 or Yamabudo, the last thing on my mind is light stability, unless I'm going to use that for something that someone's going to post. And if that's going to be on a wall and it's not with UV protection, then you got a problem. Or somebody who uses gold, like gold inks that are not mica based, but rather some type of metal base. And I've seen those things turn green over time. You know,
sometimes not even that long of time, or not that much time, depending on the ink.
And, yeah, I had a piece from Bill Lilly that was beautiful. It was a flourished piece, but you know, he was using some type of, I think, P.H. Martin's copper plate inks, and that's not mica-based ink. And so, but things like that, probably for fountain pen guys, isn't really and gals isn't really a big thing. But you know, light stability is one thing to consider. I thought we had a conversation the other night about the acidity of inks and how important it is for certain plating materials to be exposed to. You know, if it's too basic, it's a problem. I didn't even know that, because that's why so many inks are acidic, I guess. But
Dr. Brown, how long do you topically leave ink in a pen?
This is a utterly non-scientific, non-founded in anything but a bit of experience call. So this is really not, I have no data on this, but my personal habit is, if something is going to be inked up and not be touched for 2 weeks, then I take it out. Two weeks is the max. And this could just as well have been 17 days or 12 days, because again, it's not based in any real data. But that's that's probably some sort of obsessive thing of 2 weeks, and then that's kind of what I go with. But that's what I'd say.
What do you feel? How do you feel about demonstrators?
I think demonstrators are fun because you can see the inside of the pen. I feel like Christopher Walken now, no function anymore. The clear pens I like because they are, because you can see the inside. I always found that quite attractive, because especially if you have an interesting filling system. Like I have this the Conid here, which has a filling system which you can't see because there's ink in it. But that to me is fun. I also like seeing the ink in it a lot. That I always find that fun.
Are they ever going to get back to making pens again? You know, that's kind of a grail pen for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've heard that if you pay them €1 million in cash, then that they make anything you want. But I actually don't know. I haven't heard anything. And that too, I get asked a lot. I think because people think that either I have all these people under speed dial, and that I can just say, "Hey, Werner, you need to start again," but that's not the case, or that they think it's because we're all European, like, and Belgium is the country next door to us. But unfortunately, I have not heard anything about them restarting their production or anything. I simply don't know. But it is an expensive pen.
Yeah,
and it's a fun pen.
Yeah. Do any of your students, I have a brother who's a doctor of economics at George Mason. I've never asked him this, but do any of your students prepare anything handwritten, or is it all digital now?
It depends.
Assignments.
Right now, because of the whole pandemic, pretty much everything is online. Some of the teaching is face-to-face, but most of it's submitted now, including exams, is online. But back in the day, I did have handwritten exams. That feels like a lifetime ago now. But anyway, there was handwriting on that, obviously. And there were also occasionally students who would use fountain pens. And there also were students who then found out about my YouTube channel. And those are interesting conversations to have. Like, what about that stuffed lobster? Don't worry about it. Carry on, just do your assignment. But it does happen, and it is fun. And in all honesty, it has occasionally led to interesting conversations with students who use fountain pens. And it's not very common. It's actually very rare. But you can have interesting conversations, and some have kind of, I remember at least one student here that kind of adopted the whole, I'm just going to call it the fountain pen lifestyle, I guess, that we all have, where you really like pens and like to use them and try different inks, and like, as opposed to just being a casual user who has one pen and uses cartridges and nothing else. Nothing wrong with that, would you say?
See, talking about me? Talking about me?
Yeah, I was trying to subtly make it clear, but I'm glad you caught the hint. But I mean, but it's fun, right? It's fun. This is a fun, interesting conversation.
I have plenty of ink I can send you if you just,
No, thank you.
All right, then.
Hey, guys, just real quick. This is the Conid bulk filler. This is the king size one. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's pretty.
Just so you know, Stephen, I had that. I mean, I sold that pen. Or somebody wanted to buy it. I'm like, okay, buy it. But it's a great pen, and that's probably the best. Maybe not the best, but one of the most innovative filler systems I've ever seen. It makes use of that entire, pretty amazing.
And a nice guy, Francis, who designed that system. I had the pleasure of meeting him at pen shows, I think, twice, and he was actually a professional problem solver for engineering problems and such, and that clearly shines through in his system.
Yeah.
He's also a great pen repairman, but when you talk to him, he's the most humble and sweet guy, like super nice, and that's it's a lot of fun to chat with him.
There's a Pen BBS like that out now.
I did want to tell you, Stephen, I was really happy to see that you got your LB6. He called me and told me Paul Rossi was making the clips, and I went about 3 years waiting on my pen for Andres, and but I do have one of those LB6s. They're a fabulous pen.
It's a very pretty pen, and this is a good example, I think, of where, like, penny for penny, that does not add up, but it is a very pleasant pen to use, and with the handmade parts,
Speaking of the devil,
definitely pretty.
There he is. Oh, there he is.
Andy.
Yeah, there he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget how much money I spent with him at that convention. So.
Oh my. But if you can get one, I was fortunate to get mine used, so I didn't have to spend the high dollar, but it was still high dollar. But have
you seen what they're charging for LB5s now? They're asking for on eBay $5,000 and more.
Yeah,
it's crazy. And try and find one of those cross points, Stephen, especially with the king of pen size.
Oh yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah,
you have one, I believe, right?
Maybe. Yeah, no. I
Where specifically do you live?
I'll whip it out. It's here. There is an LB5, and there is an
that's
LM1,
one I've been looking at. Yeah.
And there is an LB6.
Oh yeah, here we go. There you go. And there's my LB.
Red.
Wow.
That's my red.
Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. He no longer has, there's no longer the diffusion bonded material anymore. I think Andy said that's gone. Correct?
Yeah, I've heard all sorts of things, and I've also recently it's become difficult to establish contact with Andy, so I don't really know.
Yeah,
he's in a bunker underground.
I think so. Yeah, I had a difficult right after my last episode where I finally got restituted my deposit and in a pen in lieu of the deposit, and but I have not talked to him in a while. I need to find out if he's okay. I mean, he's not a young man.
Yeah.
I've not heard that he's not okay.
Okay.
So I mean, I do think that he's all right. I mean, at this point it would be speculation or gossip. I don't know, but what I do know is that a number of people, and when I say a number of people, I don't mean one or two. I mean closer to 10 in the past. Maybe 3 or 4 months have contacted me, all asking me for information because down payments were made or whatever, and so far nothing has happened, but they also didn't receive any pens. So I don't want to start anything.
ROL.
Oh, no.
But it's a bit of a problem.
Hold on. Do it again.
In EU.
Wow. So how's the weather up in Canada, boys? Stephen, I noticed that you put some images of the snow on the ground and you walking in the trail.
So far, it's pretty nice here. It was not as cold as it was last year. There was one stretch where it was very cold, but at this point it's quite nice. There's still a bit of snow on the ground, but it's in Celsius. It's only a couple degrees below zero, so it's really bad. Quite pleasant. Yeah.
Mike,
you guys
how
are
about
supposed
you?
to get pretty warm like this next week or so. I know around Calgary and all that's supposed to get up into the double digits. I heard. It's just rainy here. We don't get the beautiful. I'm jealous of where Stephen is because that's closer to where I grew up, and I'm used to that kind of winter and cold, but sunny and not depressing. Not that, I mean, the weather doesn't really affect me, but it's gloomy and rainy here.
Well, I won't tell you that it's 73 degrees here.
Well, yeah. LA. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize how big Canada is. I was talking seriously. I know where, I'm Italian, so you have to forgive me a little bit. But this guy was on from Canada. I think he was maybe from Ontario, and to go to the extra province, he said it was 40-hour drive. And I'm thinking, it's just amazing. That's a trip across the country here, but that was from in the middle of Canada to, well, I don't know.
It would take me, like 16 hours, I think, to drive straight to Stephen right now. If I left right now, I think around 16, maybe like 14, perhaps from here.
Wow.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Robin Williams had a great statement about Canada, what he said about Canada. He said, "You're a big country. You are the kindest country in the world. You are like a very nice apartment over a meth lab."
Hey, now wait a minute. Them is fighting words.
Having spent longer than a decade living in both, true.
I would say this: we take the military and we annex Canada. Just take it. Why not? Just take it.
We already got the trucks up there.
Stephen Brown's house to get those LB5 pens.
I mean, you could. It's not like we can put up a fight. What are we going to do? Get the pirate ship from the West Edmonton Mall to go out and fight for us? Canada.
And then you guys, do you have a few trucks backing up your highways? Is that still a thing up there?
It's not as bad on this side of the country.
Okay.
Things are bad on the other side. Right now, Canada's being silly, but we don't got to get into that.
No, I knew that was creating a problem.
Yeah, they've been having real problems.
Yeah.
We've
it's unfortunate.
Stephen, talk a little bit about steel nibs, gold nibs, titanium nibs, anything you're fine. I mean, I prefer gold nibs simply because it's an ego thing. I could write equally well with a steel nib versus a titanium, but I want gold if I'm paying for a fountain pen. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly see the issue with the aesthetic appeal. For example, I have found over the years that I have seen some steel nibs. I always say the Faber-Castell steel nibs, Emotion, those kinds of pens. They do some sort of insane polishing jobs on the steel nibs. They are super smooth. They're, to me, incredibly pleasant to use. And I really like that. At the end of the day, it's not the gold that touches the paper, it's the tipping material. So I wonder how much that matters. Having said that, there are, of course, differences in the specific alloy used and maybe a bit more bounciness. That's a very professional term, but you know what I mean? Like bounciness in the gold versus a lot of steel. I find titanium nibs, I always have sort of a love-hate relationship with titanium nibs. I like their springiness. I also have a lot of feedback, but what I find with titanium is that I tend to push them too hard, thinking, oh, this is titanium. I can really make a really nice wide line with this, and then I end up with a nib that's sprung, and that it's titanium. You can also bend back and then just be a bit more careful next time. But the feedback is very different, and it's a very different writing experience. If I were to have to choose, I would probably choose 14 karat gold because I really like the writing experience of 14 karat gold. But to be frank, I would probably pick any fountain pen anyway. So as long as it's something that appeals to me, it's great. Palladium is a very interesting story, but that's
got a bad rap, I think.
I have a Schaefer balance with a 14 karat gold nib and a feather touch nib, soft nib. And I have a Wing Sun 626 with a steel nib, and the steel nib is a softer. It's softer than a 14 karat gold nib on the Schaefer. So.
What about the Pierre's Desiderata pens? Do you have any? I mean, I've got one of his pens with the Nico G nib. It's beautiful. If you do it, what are your thoughts on that?
Terrible, but no, I think they're really nice. They're really nice. And Pierre, I also really like Pierre, but I think they're very nice pens. I think he does very good work. And the whole dip nib in fountain pens is not necessarily for me, but that's because the whole flexi writing is not really for me. But I do think he does a very nice job in the creation of his pens. And with everything he makes, I think you also have to commend him for all the work he does, because he makes his own filling systems, he makes his own feeds. So I mean, that is really someone that when he says I make this pen, he has made that pen, except for the nib maybe, but pretty much everything else is made by him. And I think that's very cool, as opposed to say, nothing wrong with that either, but say, here's an acrylic pen and I put a Bock nib on it and now it's $150. But again, I'm not judging that, but I do think that Pierre is a step above that because of all the components to those pens that he makes on his own. They're fun.
You might not, if you know, Stephen, you can answer. Joe, you might know. What's the longevity of a Nico G in one of his pens? I've known and followed him since he very, very first started, but I've never owned one. I've used them before, but my like hesitance back in the day was always that, well, all fountain or all dip pen nibs, like they wear out or they rust and things like that.
I mean,
I'm ignorant to how they like. Because they don't last forever in a fountain pen. No. So what's the longevity in his modern type of stuff?
In my hands, 30 seconds. But that's probably a reflection on me and the way I handle a flex nib. As a serious answer to your question, they should last a bit. But you are correct. They will rust. Inevitably, they will corrode. And the other thing, of course, is there is no tipping. So there's also the wearing out of the actual tips with a lot of writing. I haven't really studied. I don't know if Joe has more of a view on that.
Yeah, no, it's hard to say. It depends on the ink, the acidity of the ink, particulate matter in the ink, how much spreading you do of the nib. They do wear out, obviously, Michael. You know that better, as anybody else does. But the Nico G nib is one of those nibs you can drive through a concrete wall and still use it.
I say, you could drive one of those drive over with your truck and it'll still be potentially not even prepared properly enough to write with.
They're replaceable too, I mean, you can replace that nib. But I think where I think some people make a mistake is they don't realize they have to prep that nib too. Because that nib is usually coated with oil or some type of varnish or something to stop it from oxidizing. And any dip pen nib should be cleaned thoroughly before, even if you put the feed on it. I would still clean the pen and don't get your finger oil on it.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, it'll repel the ink right away. So
I guess that was kind of my question. Just and Marilyn can maybe answer this because I know you just had one there.
What was
how long,
that?
Like we know that they have to be replaced. Approximately how long? If I'm using that as my like daily writer pen, what's your guess? How much like when am I going to have to replace that nib?
If you're using it consistently, like every day, that's all you do, it's going to last you about as long as
because it's the rust issue, not a
month. About a month. It depends if you put the steel nib or the titanium coated.
That's
nibs,
titanium
because the titanium ones last for almost 3 months.
They don't give as good of a hairline though.
Yeah, they're kind of. But this, I saw a lady using a dip nib in a Instagram video, and I said, how much would it cost to get one of those nibs? And this nib was like $45 just to get to me, but I'm not even going to use it because it's beautiful and it's got a rainbow on it. But this is I've gotten 1 second. I had one put in my I ordered one in my Jinhao X450. I've had to replace it because the feed gets stuck.
We're not responsible for any breakage.
Right. Just because this was my question doesn't mean it's my fault if you break your.
No, but I was just doing this for an example. It manipulates the feed so that you can't put a normal nib in and pull it out. So that's all. It was just.
Also, I think lasts is a relative term because when I was doing copper plate stuff way back when I was trying to produce my best work, even the best nibs might only last me 2 sentences. And I don't mean that they'd go, but I know right. And Michael can attest. You know right away when the line thickness starts to go on the hairlines. That means put the pen down and get another one. And
that's why my question was more about the rust issue sitting in the feed, less about tipping and quality of writing and all that kind of stuff.
Unless you use an iron gall ink, Michael, then it becomes an issue, right? Because that's truly acidic. Yeah.
Yeah, I use this one. This is an Ackerman Pump Pen, and I used this consistently for a month last year for Christmas. And again, the problem is basically where the feed meets and the feed was fine, but the nib just corroded so fast. It only lasted for about a month.
Yeah, so a month. Cool.
I put the link to Pierre's website into the chat section for anyone who's interested. Very interesting pens if you like the flexi stuff, but I'm not into flexi fountain pens. The Mont Blanc I use, but it's not my.
I'm not good with flexi straight pens. I can't make them.
I don't know what it mean either, Michael. Me neither.
Chin Long is probably the best straight pen flexi writer, like straight fountain pen. Like if I wanted to give somebody a fountain pen with a soft, moderately wet noodle, whatever range of fountain pen, and make it look the best, give it to Chin because it's bloody magic what she can do with them. It doesn't make sense to me.
What you notice about her writing when you watch her write, there's no hesitation whatsoever. Nope. Nothing. She immediately forms the letters. So
every time I try and do the things that hit you, I've broken 3 nibs trying to do things that she does, and I'm just like, she's magical. That's all there is to it. You have to be magical.
Yep.
Wow. Interesting.
Okay. Want?
How are we doing on time, guys? Jake?
Jake, you're on mute.
These are beautiful.
Yeah, that's some of the stuff he made. And
really nice.
And again, they're reasonably priced.
Yeah, I got my Ackerman Pump Pen for, I think it was $50, something like that. And the only problem with these is like they don't have a little bladder on the side. I sometimes feel like when you're using.
Okay, Marilyn, excuse me, was that from you?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Jake, how we doing on time?
We got a little longer to go.
We're fine. Keep on.
I was just saying that the Ackerman Pump Pen, the reason that I like it so much is because it has that little bladder on the side.
I know.
And when you push it, bloops a little bit of ink out and makes great for fountain pen ink.
Give it a boost.
Yep. Sometimes you need a little boost. without having to shake it like this. I don't want to be a Polaroid.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting what Mont Blanc was able to achieve with that calligraphy pen, because I think they have a certain alloy of their gold. I guess 18 karat gold. It's a different kind of alloy. The pen, if you look at it carefully, it's a more yellow, a lighter yellow gold. And so I don't know what the alloy is. I don't care. I don't care how easy you are at that. That nib is going to spring at some point. It will not. You have to have it repaired. And I just don't like putting gold pens through that.
Did Stephen? Didn't you review that pen? I know Aziza did.
Yeah, I did. I did actually think it was as flex pens go, modern flex pens go. It was actually a nice writer. I agree, though, the concern I always have, but I mean, I think you can say that about any flex pen, is the strain that you put on the nib and what that does. And also, not to change the subject, but I mean, I think it was a nice incarnation of modern flex. Having said that, I think one of the issues is that people don't always understand how to use a flex nib. I'm definitely not saying I understand. I'm just saying in general. And what I'm trying to say is the number of times I've had an email that stated something like, I have purchased a Pelican M1000 because I wanted a flex nib, and it turns out that it flexed only once, as I said earlier, is quite overwhelming. And that's because people have that expectation that because there is some sort of common understanding that the M1000 nibs are springier, but that doesn't make it a flex nib. So if you then treat it as such, boom, you're going to have a very interesting experience. And that, I think, also applies or extends to that Mont Blanc nib of do understand what you can and cannot do. And the fact that someone demonstrated a vintage flex wet noodle doesn't mean that that is that.
Most people push even the vintage, even the Waterman artist nib. People push those way farther than they should ever be pushed. It's scary because of all the close-up Instagram videos of the Nico G's doing the classic figure eight, super big shades. They look amazing, but then people don't, and you can't blame them because it's not, the information's not out there, but you see a Nico G in a fountain pen, you assume that your Mont Blanc or your vintage 14 karat or your, Conklin, every manufacturer now has some nib labeled some kind of flex, which scares me so much because people don't know. So people, unfortunately, break nibs, and it's really, I guess, education. That's what we got to do. Pen shows.
Yeah. The other aspect of flex writing that sometimes is really overlooked unless you've done it with the top of the line vintage pens for like the Gillette Principality is that there's a snappiness to them. If you watch anybody writing with a noodle, it lazily comes apart and lazily comes back together. To do what Michael Ward does with his pens, you have to have an incredible amount of snapback to that nib. And then you also have to be, incredibly sharp. Most people who are fountain pen users that like glassy, smooth pens would never be happy writing with those pens. They're like, that's why I've developed a need for feedback. I can't write with a glassy, smooth fountain pen. And so it's a personal preference thing, but this is from decades in copper plate script. And I hear people, oh, it's flex like a noodle. Yeah, but the noodle is not something I'd want to. You like it, that's fine, great. But to try and do what he could do, what I used to be able to do with copper plate with that nib, can't do it. There's just no way of getting the incredibly. I've shown you guys pictures of this. The incredibly fine hairlines contrasted these wide shades. That nib is snappy. Boom, came right back once you lift up on it. Not just simply, slowly come together.
Another issue. I'll add on to what you're saying too, with there's the snappiness, and then also the biggest issue I have, and it's with, I've had many vintage, beautiful, fine flexi pens, but because of just the fact that there's a feed and a nib, we have a feed that doesn't move and a nib that when it bends, obviously moves. When the nib flexes, all the ink gets pushed onto the nib. On a dip pen, when it closes, that ink just goes back onto the nib. But there's not room for it to do that on a fountain pen. So all that ink in the feed goes in. And then when the nib comes back down to the feed, that ink has nowhere to go. So the hairline coming out of a shade, like if, let's say I'm coming down with a shade and I go back to hairline, I'm going to have not a good hairline till I get like a couple, probably like millimeters or whatever, until I'm then into an upstroke and I'll maybe get a hairline back again. So it's hairline, but it's not as good. It can't cut off because there's just too much ink there. I've used 2 modern flexible nibs in my life of going to pen shows and trying other. I've never owned them. There were other people's that worked perfectly, but keeping in mind that the shading was going from like a perfect hairline to like a less than half a millimeter shade, like slight line variation, not what anybody else would consider, not like what I do with my dip pens. It was a slight shade and it gave back to a hairline and it was good. And it's very rare. And even Nibmeisters, it's sort of a, not really sure why it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But that's, yeah, there's just too much ink there. No snap and the ink has nowhere to go.
What you're describing, Michael, is the original form of Spencerian as it was taught by PRS, Platts Roger Spencer, and his children. They're very delicate shades and very delicate hairlines. So it's not like it's later on in the late 1800s they start developing these incredible flares. So they're strokes, but yeah, it's interesting.
Now, speaking of the Nibmeisters, I once asked Richard Bender about flex pens, and he flex nibs, on a fountain pen, and he's not a fan. Not a fan at all. I mean, because they're not meant to do that. I mean, like you said, they're not designed for that specifically.
Stephen, wasn't there? It might have been ASC Manu. Didn't they make a nib a feed that actually, as the nibs lifted, the feed stuck? Wasn't it something?
What?
I forget. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a thing. I have one here.
That's intriguing.
I don't know how well it works. I've never used one.
It's let me
Which
give
is
you
not,
one
it's
second.
not the
Here.
gladiator. No.
No. This was the original Bologna's. Here, let me use this fancy gadget. Woefully underprepared. Took me half an hour, but here we go. This is the nib, which is their magic flex nib. But then at the bottom of the feed, you can sort of see a line.
There it is. Yes.
And that lifts up. So when you flex this, it's a little tough to do, but I can't simulate that writing. But then that part of the feed kind of lifts up too, and that it works reasonably well. I would still be careful in how much you push this.
That's cool though, because that seems like it. That's the first innovation I've ever seen to solve that specific issue that I've talked about it for years. And I mean, I never knew that existed. That's brilliant that somebody.
And it works.
I want to try one.
Well. Nathan says to put a piece of tape on the top of the nib, and that will facilitate reverse capillary action too.
Yeah, there are some nibs, Japanese nibs. What is it, Stephen? The Emperor. There's one that has a piece of metal on the top of the nib that bends back.
The Fusion, the Delta Fusion.
But that was a pen that was really steel pen that they put a little gold piece on.
No, it is the I've got one.
Pilot makes something similar to that.
Oh, well, you adjust it and the point goes down and creates a more stiffer nib, or you can back it off.
Oh, the Pilot Justice.
Justice 95. Pilot Justice 95. Yes, and it actually does affect the springiness of the nib. I would never flex it, but it does create a more bouncy nib.
Yeah, and then there is also those Emperor nibs, which Joe was talking about from Sailor, and they indeed have a sort of metal prong-like thing on top of it, which also acts as a collector and all that stuff. Yeah, it's different companies did something like that, I think. Yeah.
Some of those nibs are just much as expensive as an expensive fountain pen on its own. I've had like 2 or 3 cross points, but I think only one was made by the father. The other 2 were made by the son, Stephen, and you probably know more about it than I do. But there's somebody, I forget his name, somebody on the fountain pen groups who had the father do it to his Mont Blanc 149. It's an absolutely gorgeous nib. I mean, it's just beautifully layered on. It's a bi-layered nib. And so it's actually a cross point. I don't know if I can find that.
Yeah, and there was also some people, and unfortunately, I'm completely blanking on the name. There was Ralph who did it at some point, but there was another person on Instagram, and this is really obnoxious because I can't for the life of me remember his name, but he was experimenting with this, with putting 3 nibs on top of each other, 4 nibs on top of each other, doing all kinds of different grinds.
I haven't seen him in a while, Steve. I don't know what happened to Ralph. I know, yeah, reaching for Ralph is what he went by.
I was just going to ask if Ralph was, is he still around?
No,
I know he left the game for a little bit.
Ralph and Andy Lambrew, man, they're in the same bunker. They're hanging out together, and that nobody knows where any of them are.
Nobody knows where they are. Cool.
As far as I know, because just seriously, Ralph, I asked at some point Eric the same question, Eric Orozco from Philly Pen Show, etc. And in my presence, he called Ralph, and his number was disconnected. So this is complete speculation, but we had the feeling that maybe Ralph went back to the Philippines at some point and decided to stay there or something like that. But I have no clue if that's true. That was just our idea at that time because his phone was disconnected. So
hope you can see that image. That's the 149 with the Nagahara cross modification. I mean, look at how beautifully that was done.
That is gorgeous.
Yeah. I
forget the guy's name. He's pretty well into fountain pens. I just can't remember whose nib this is. And anyway.
That's very nice.
Jane Campbell would know. She's got all of them.
Yeah, there's a few people with, one of the things that I've mentioned this before, Stephen did a presentation one night on a show about the collector versus an accumulator. And that rang some bells with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you remember, I had these images, right, of like 20, 20 arcocelluloid pens. I'm thinking to myself, I don't use any one of them. And so it wasn't like it just got me into thinking, what am I really using? I have some pens I still don't like to use because the point size, but I started focusing more of what I was doing on, not even for value of pens, just the pens I enjoy. I mean, Sailor Pro Gear with a 21 karat EF nib. Does it matter if it's 14 karat EF nib? No. But, the nibs I can actually write with and use, because for me, it's about the writing experience, how and when I first seen you write, I remember laughing, seeing how hard you press that nib into the paper. And I thought I had a light touch. Oh, was I wrong? So it took me a while to develop that, not that I'm real light even to this day, but it's lighter than it used to be.
And I think it's a very important concept, and also a concept that for some people, it sparks some controversy, let's put it that way, because some people say, no, but look, the fountain pens are the collection, so if you have more than 2, then it's a collection. And I'm fine with that. I'm not trying to push some sort of dubious agenda.
No,
but in my mind, it's an important distinction. If you have a collection, then I think there should be a focus, and that means that you could have all the Parker 51s or all the ASC Bologna Extras or whatever, but that is then a focus. Or you have all kinds of Arco materials, that's a focus. I would not be able to classify what I have as a collection for that reason. There is no focus. It's also not as big as it used to be, but what I have, I love. And I think that is a very important thing. I would rather have 3 pens that I absolutely love than have 300 pens where I have 290 that hardly ever get used. And to me, that is important. It's also, for me, it's changed from how I approach purchasing pens. I don't remember the last pen I bought because I don't buy that much anymore. And the reason for that is, if I now purchase something, which again is very rare, the question to me is, will this really make me that much happier if I own this? And if you change your attitude, which when you start up with fountain pens is completely normal, you want to explore everything in different nibs, that makes complete sense. It's very similar in many different hobbies. But one important thing for me is, if you keep doing that and keep looking for another thing and another thing and another thing, then you're kind of making your happiness contingent on, oh, I must buy this and then I'll be happy, and I've got to have this and then I'll be happy, and that never ends. I don't mean to turn this into a depressing or a philosophical
again. Is he talking about me?
Are we in one of the stoicism videos now?
Is that what just happened?
Stephen, I call it my 15 minutes of happiness. I get the pen, I get 15 minutes of joy out of it, then I'm on to the next thing.
Well,
exactly. And there's
an economic principle. It's the law of diminishing returns. Either the more you get, the less value that you get out of it. Yeah.
And I think it's an important thing, because I do get questions from people along the lines of, And I'm serious. I find this very heartbreaking. This ties into what we talked about earlier about pens getting more and more expensive. I get emails from people who say, I can't afford any pens that are more than $30. Am I not a real collector? Well, come on. It's about the fun and the joy. Whatever you use, what you can afford, that is for you. And that's what if that brings you pleasure, and that's it. And I don't think we should look down on that. And sometimes that happens. I remember when at some point I used Pilot Parallels as a size comparison for in my reviews, and that wasn't very fortunate. But I just didn't have access to a Lamy Safari at that point. And someone commented and said, "Well, this is really absurd that you use a Pilot Parallel because it's not a real fountain pen, and everyone who loves fountain pens has at least a Pilot Custom 74, so you should use something like that." And the harsh reality is not everyone can afford that. Also, there is a lot to say about everybody who loves pens has to own that particular pen.
That was probably me. I apologize. I'm sorry.
No, but it's that kind of stuff of you have to be sensitive to what the community out there has, and that is probably not a $2,000 pen. And that's fine. So that's okay. And you can use what you have, and that's okay. And you can only have 2 pens, and that's okay. It's all fine as long as it's consensual and nobody gets hurt.
I always tell people, if you're trying to get into pens and you don't know what you're doing, watch some videos and save some money, and then get one that at least looks nice, because you can 9 times out of 10 change the nib, and the nibs are like $20-30.
And Marilyn, your post on Stevens wasn't about that. It was a custom 74 rainbow pen. Remember, you're always about the rainbow.
I would love to see all of the companies just make a rainbow pen just for me.
Just for you.
Because I love rainbows. But when I saw this on the Goulet website, it looked like it was, slitted in a rainbow like, and then I got it and I was like, well, this is a blob of rainbow. It's very pretty, but I wasn't expecting that.
Is it not a Roy G. Biv? Is that what you're trying to say?
It is a Roy G. Biv, but like it's kind of a smushed.
Yeah.
Like they had it at a special angle.
Separation.
Yeah, it was.
Stephen, the other thing about expensive fountain pens, you and I have discussed this before. You and I have both bought pens in the $1,000 and higher area that required a Nibmeister to fix them. That's really disappointing when you get not even at that $500, $200, but expensive pens that need work.
Yeah, and I find that I always find that a difficult discussion too. And in those consult the doctor videos, this comes up quite often. And I always think of it as if you were to buy a car and then you find out that it doesn't run, then that's the end of it. You take it back to the dealership. And it's like, fix this because this is unacceptable. But when it comes to fountain pens, somehow we have gotten to a stage where we say, oh, I spent $1,000 on a pen. Well, here's another 50 for a Nibmeister because that's okay. That's how fountain pens work. And that is kind of strange that things have grown that way. What I will say, in trying to defend something that is basically not defendable, because I still don't know how you would defend having a product that doesn't write. What I will say is, if it is a matter of getting a pen to write exactly how you want it to write, then I find it a different story. But if you open a pen and out of the box it doesn't write, and it does happen, we all know that, I think that is more problematic. And I don't know why that is the way it is, but these days I don't know why a lot of things are the way they are. But having said that, I don't understand why with fountain pens we have come to accept that, it might be very expensive, but it just doesn't write, and that's just the way it is because that's how fountain pens work. And it's strange that companies don't really seem to up the game then.
Stephen, did you see the talk with Sal Matrone that was on the other day? Sal was on the Zoom Hangout. He announced that at the end of the year, they're going to be producing their own gold nib in-house.
Nice.
which I thought was really impressive. I know Santini does it. They just produced the number 8 size nib. And I think
Aurora does. Aurora as well.
Oh, yeah, Aurora does. Yeah, sure. And I think this is an important thing because when people always ask, well, how's the pen right? Well, you have either a Yovo or a Bach nib, you know, and so if it's tuned right, it's fine. But I think it's exciting to see. And small makers can't do this. It's just too much of an investment. And if you remember Ramillo pens from Spain, they used to hand wrought their own. And I've got one of those, but that was one of the, they're no longer made, but that was one of the nibs that needed work from Mike Masuyama. But just to see that as being done. And I'm somebody who likes Yovo nibs and Bach nibs, but from an individual standpoint, these big companies, I think they, you know, it's a great thing. It was great to hear Sal say that. So
the Leonardo pens, they're very good quality on their steel nibs. Do you agree on that? I think you've been a big flag waver for them as well, haven't you, Stephen?
Yeah, but that's just because they pay me a lot. No, I do actually really like Leonardo pens. I do, and obviously just for legal reasons, they don't actually pay me. But I mean, but having said that, I have liked the brand from the start because, relatively speaking, especially if you go for a steel nib pen, I think they are relatively affordable as fountain pens go. And I think from that perspective, it's a sympathetic company. I've also, every time I review these, there are also people who say, well, I had one that didn't write at all, etc. So, I mean, I sure, again, opinions will vary. My experience with Leonardo has been really, really quite good.
And they're pretty.
Yeah, very nice.
Sure.
I had obtained the new Mosaico, and I showed it on the video for Salvatore, and I wasn't supposed to have it. They have not started shipping them yet, and so I've had to return it, which is fine. But I got a good. It was a wonderful pen while I had it. Very nice.
It does nice things. This is one that I got. This is from a company in Korea, which is their Grande model, and it's a little dark here, but it's a very nice, deep, I guess, sort of cobalt blue with some nice striations in it, and it's very nice. And because it's the Grande, you know, ebonite feed, it has a 14K nib. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to return this, but I won't.
Is that a Leonardo pen you just showed us? Is that a Leonardo?
No, he says from Korea. Oh, it is from Leonardo. Okay.
Yeah, it's a Leonardo, but made exclusively for a Korean pen company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I got you. Okay, that's not Omas Arco. Not Arco. Is that the?
No. It's just an acrylic, which actually was made by Jonathan Brooks, if I remember correctly. So
I had dinner with Brooks about a week and a half ago. He can't keep up with it all.
No, I bet.
Thousands upon thousands of rods coming.
How's his health, Joe? How's his health?
Better. He's doing better. They never really identified what was going on with him, but he's doing better. So he's got some extra help now with making these rods. But man, he's got orders upon orders, and I'm happy to see it. You know, but he's just a real busy guy.
Can I make a statement about expensive pens and the beauty of the free market?
No. Just kidding.
Okay. Well, you know, we've discussed the price of how they've gotten out of control somewhat, but just recently, this company has put on, and it's been the hottest new thing that they've come out with this overlay. I don't know if you've seen this, Stephen and Michael.
Asveen, the
Asveen, the V169 for $30. $35. We've all gotten them now. An incredibly well-made pen. The substance, it feels wonderful. What do you think, Joe? Did you get yours yet?
I got 4 of them. I'm gonna probably give them away, but they were a great pen. They were a great pen. I actually posted a video, and I'll keep one probably, and I don't need 4 of them. But for $35, what's that?
Overlay for $35. Wow.
I have decided that either you got to eliminate the sound of the V or the A. It's either going to be an S-vine or a A-vine. Yeah. It can't be an S-vine.
A pain in the ass-vine. But,
the only thing I don't like in this pen is a clip, because when I uncap it, I hold it like this, and I twist the clip, and it catches the cutout and sticks there.
Oh, okay.
So for me,
but the point is that they're making something that resembles an expensive pen, for an affordable price. So
and Stephen, before we break, I don't know if you noticed, but Mike Green is on. Mike is actually a relatively new pen maker and custom pen maker. He's learned his lesson. He's wearing bow ties, but unfortunately, that's a you tie yourself bow tie, right, Mike? Yeah. See, Larry doesn't.
Yes, I tie it myself. Yeah, I can do that too if I can figure out where it is.
That's why. There we go. Mike is actually a relatively new pen maker, small, and so I just want you to know who he was.
That's the Wyatt Earp look right there when it's tangling down.
Yeah. You can switch styles pretty quickly.
One day we'll get Larry a real bow tie.
I think another nice thing.
One day, Doc, I'm going to get you a real bottle of wine.
I got lots of bottles of wine, baby. I don't need any more.
No, I'm going to get you off that cheap crap you drink. Get you a real man's wine.
Ripple.
Right.
Yeah. I think one of the very exciting things is that there are so many new pen makers now.
Okay.
The finest bottle of wine ever.
It's time to do some giveaways real quick before I forget. We should have did it yesterday on Heinz, but the winner of the Heinz pen that he donated I believe a Mary Maid. The name of the person that was chosen was Stephen. What's your last name, Stephen?
Stephen who?
Yes, that's you.
No, Stephen. Stan.
Oh, Stan won.
Oh, wow, thank you. Wow.
I don't want to have Stephen Brown as the winner of a giveaway. That won't go over well.
No, I don't enter giveaways. I made that mistake once, and I won something, and that was not
Yeah.
So Stan, are you there?
Congratulations, Stan.
Thank you.
Are you excited, Stan?
Yeah, very excited.
Congratulations.
Yeah. All right, let's hear it. All right. So Stan won that one. Now, I think we have this pen case. It's called the Yak from Lena from Pen Boutique. So I was going to give it away today, but I am going to be giving it away later in the week. So somebody's going to get it. It's a 2-pen case. So really nicely done. And I think you're really going to love it. So, okay. And then Doc, when does your giveaway start?
I'm going to do that at the end of the month. I've already arranged everything with Mike for that giveaway. It'll be one of his ebonite pens with the gold nib. And yeah, that one there. So the thing's all filled out. The pen's all paid for. So whatever it is.
Okay, I'll get a hold of
exclusively to your site.
I got it, yeah.
Mike, you made that ebonite pen to stink up the house?
No, it did pretty good. I think I've learned a little bit from Mr. Hines. I think it might have been I was using some high sulfur ebonite. The newer stuff I'm using hasn't stunk up the house. So my wife hasn't divorced me.
That was my problem.
It's why I asked Jim the question. Does the high sulfur content necessarily imply, it's the scientist in me, necessarily imply it's a poor quality ebonite? They stink the house up more, but does it really mean it's poor? I don't know. I just don't know enough about it. That's why I asked the question.
The pure black ebonite that I was turning was also, I think they put more carbon in it. And so it's a little dustier when you're turning it. I don't think that implies anything about the quality of the material. It's just a slightly different composition. I think also his point also was if you get better at turning them, you try not to hit higher temperatures. You get better at actually handling the material. Yeah. So if everything's sharp, if you're less aggressive and more graceful about how you're turning the material, it doesn't get as hot, so it doesn't outgas and doesn't vaporize.
The thing about that giveaway, just so folks know, is that Mike has not ordered the gold nib yet. Once the winner is selected, they can then choose the tip point size they want, and that'll be a Yovo 18 or 14 karat gold nib. So it may take a little while to get that in. So
I don't stock every size of gold nib. You might find that hard to believe, but I only order when I can't afford that.
and it'll be only be done to Larry's Facebook page, Larry's Fountain Pen page on Facebook. I'm not posting it to every fountain pen page, and so that becomes too much of a hassle tracking with thousands and thousands of names. So this is a much simpler thing. And anyway, yeah, don't have Stephen Brown when he won my case one time, and man, people, what the hell is he winning for? Blah blah blah. The only thing better, Stephen, would have been if Sarge Minhouse would have won.
Yeah, I know. No,
that would be awesome.
It was a similar thing once. I just, for the fun of it, I entered that thing from for Goulet when they had the free fountain pen Friday, whatever it was, and I just clicked like. I think I didn't even think
That's
about
what you had
it.
to do for my giveways. Just click like.
Yes, this is my Sarge Minhouse impression right here.
Nice.
He would always bring the best port to the LA Pen Show.
I'm a port guy too, man. I had recently had a 1963 20 port that was unbelievable. So
I miss seeing Sarge at shows.
Yeah, I know he'll be coming back in again, but he only comes in for the big ones, right?
He does. I don't go to the shows that he's at anymore. That's the problem.
Yeah. Stephen, you met him, right, in person? You met
Sarge is an outstanding man. Like he is wonderful. He's also one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, and his wife Jazz is also outstanding. They're fun. I remember back at the Cologne Pen Show years ago, we had dinner with the two of them, and it was an incredibly fun night. He's also the type of person. Sarge is one of those people who can make everyone feel at ease in seconds, just the way he talks, the way he treats you. It doesn't matter whether you're going to spend, well, I mean, I was going to say spend $20. You can't spend $20 with Sarge. It's not possible. But in any case, it doesn't matter if you're going to spend a lot. If you only want to look, if you only want to learn, if you want to buy a $4,000 pen, he has it all, doesn't matter. And he's equally nice to everyone. And that's a rare quality, to not be in it just to make money, but to also educate people, etc. I think it's very sweet.
I sold him a lot of pens for my collection over the last few years, and so I'm not interested. I mean, it's not like I have to get the maximum dollar. I know the pens will find a great home if he sells them.
Yeah,
and gentleman to deal with, and as you say, the one-man pen show is a very apropos nickname for him. So
only tell Sarge there's a pen you want if you're actually going to buy it, because Sarge will find it.
He'll find it. Yeah, my only visit to the LA Pen Show about 2 or 3 years ago, I got to meet Sarge, and he's everything you've all been saying. Along with, I got to meet Dante Del Vecchio, which was a gas. He was another one I was excited to meet. And of course Andy, he was out of the bunker at that time.
He's another good salesman, though, you know.
Oh my gosh, yeah, he is for sure.
I did ask Sarge to look for a pen for me. Olga, who was on the show a few weeks ago here, Olga was able to get her hands on a Mont Blanc. I think it's the Little Prince, Le Petit Prince, and there's a model of it where the hole in the nib, that little opening in the nib, has a ruby set into it. Oh, I've never seen it before, and so of course I can't find it. I want it. He says, Sarge, if you find it, just give me a call. You know, because it's such a beautiful, it's a small little pen, but just right where the heart of the pen would be, there's an actual ruby set into a little gold mount. It's just, I wish I could find the image there. It's just beautiful. I may have to drive up to North Georgia and rob it. But
I need a cool mechanical pencil.
Yeah, they're out there. They're out. I'm going to be talking about pencils in a few weeks.
Yeah.
To do that. So I'm putting a show together on that. And pencil is, I don't know if we ever spoke about this, Stephen, but pencil is my favorite thing to write with. It tracks around the paper like an engraver's thing on copper. It's just wonderful. And so
I use it as well. Yeah, sure.
I love the pencils. I use mechanical pencils. I love the sharpened pencils. I just love the smooth pencils, you know. That's for another time.
Yeah,
I think pencils,
we're going to have a blast on that one. Lots of questions. All right, folks, we're fixing to head down. I broke my record 2 hours because I had a double shot of Doctor's Love, Dr. Stephen and Dr. Joe. Dang. Wow. And Stephen, we're going to have to bring you back.
There you go, Marilyn. That's it.
And what is that?
That was the pen I talked about. You just share that again, Marilyn. Can you do it?
Anyway, so Stephen, we're gonna have to bring you back, and I want the wife to come back with you this time, and just go all berserk.
You see the Ruby said in the thingy?
We can go nuts. Anyway, so we can look at that later, but let's get this done first, gentlemen, please. So thank you for joining me, Doc, and everybody that took the time to come on today. Well, it's time to split, okay? So anybody want to say anything before I go?
Yeah, one lad, you forgot one doc. Dr. Marilyn Darling is a gastroenterologist, so he's also a doctor.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you knew that. Come on.
We're having fun.
You knew
and
that.
I go by Dr. Pepper, just in case you're curious.
Call me Dr. Smooth.
Dr. Smooth.
I thought Marilyn was an allergy something. I don't know. I didn't know she had her own office and stuff.
We're not allergic.
I don't
to
have
Marilyn.
my own office. I work in a hospital.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you have to
my
have
own hospital
office. If you're in a hospital, have a closet or something.
Stephen, we'll catch up one day via Zoom, you and I, or whatever. So it's been a while since we talked. So
yeah, for sure.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, Marilyn. Rainbow.
Thanks, everybody.
Mike, see you later tonight, maybe.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
Who'll be the next in line for heartache? We're done. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.